Welcome to this broadcast of our discussion on winning and keeping a job in academia. And I also want to mention, I've had a couple people ask me what the piece of music you were listening to on the introduction of this right before we just showed up. And that is Jennifer Higdon's Machine that we recorded a couple years ago here. So I hope you enjoyed that as well. If you want to get more insight into that piece, check it out on our SoundCloud page. I think you'll enjoy that. We have three amazing guests with us today that I could not respect more than I do. I get the great privilege of teaching with two of them and working with our amazing students with two of them on a regular basis. One of them is my boss that I respect profoundly as well. I also, if you've watched some of these sessions, you'll realize that one of the joys of doing it is that we can invite whomever we want. And when we were thinking of this topic, we've had some remarkably talented students that have come through our conservatory, and selecting a few of them does not diminish that we love all of them. But a great example for this is Krista Jobson that's going to be joining us as well. I'm going to let Joe, the best colleague on planet Earth, tell you a little bit about our three great guests. Joe?
Thank you, Steve. I thought he was talking about me when he said about your boss. Oh, I'm just kidding. I am thrilled that this panel is working together. You are going to gather some valuable insights about the job of academia, maintaining it, traversing it, and all the details surrounding how to just be a good colleague and mentor. So I'll introduce first our dean at the conservatory, Dean Diane Petrella, also an esteemed professor of piano pedagogy who built our curriculum and really changed the face of how we presented that in our culture. And because of that great organization, she's now organizing our conservatory. Hi, Dr. Petrella.
Hi, thanks for having me.
These are all doctors. After this, we're going on first name basis. Next is Krista Jobson, who's Associate Professor of Flute, newly minted Associate Professor of Flute, I believe, within the last couple of years at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, and alum of our institution. Go Roos.
Roos.
Good to see you. Thanks for being here. And probably the colleague I have been with the longest at this conservatory, and I'm surprised he still said yes after I asked him, but I am so thrilled that Charles Robinson, who we refer to as Chuck, is Professor of Music Education and Choral Conducting and one of my dear friends.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So we're going to let Steve now take us through a series of questions that our students all submitted to us. Now we have over 130 students involved in the aspects of either online or in-person performance, but this panel session is for all of them. They all get to see these and get to respond to the great advice you give. And so we took the 100+ questions and looked at the themes, and we provided them to our panelists a little beforehand so we could navigate them with you. And we came up with a few that we would love for your responses being shared with our students. So Professor Davis is going to start us on that journey.
Thanks, Joe. And again, good morning to everybody. The first question is, I'm going to shoot it over to Dr. Robinson, and it's just, how did you know you wanted to spend your life in academia?
Well, again, it's a pleasure to be a part of this panel. And so without going into detail about my professional journey, I think it's important to say that really, I always just thought of myself as a music teacher. Even now when people say, what do you do? I say, I'm a music teacher. I teach at UMKC at the conservatory. And so that's important to say because my decision really was just sort of an evolution from middle school teaching and high school teaching. But to specifically answer the question, I don't think there was a morning I woke up and thought, that's what I want to do. But I will tell you that it hadn't occurred to me until just a month or so before I decided to pursue doctoral work to prepare to begin to teach at a college level. So specifically, I'll answer it in two ways. Number one, that I felt like I had something to offer after about 10 or 12 years of teaching to help train the next generation of music teachers, and I wanted to do that. And the other thing was I wanted to live and work in a place where I could keep growing and learning forever. And those two things drove me then to doctoral study and then to wanting to be a college teacher.
Thanks, Chuck. Diane?
Yeah, I kind of did have that aha moment. I was a first generation college student, and none of my family had gone to school. I didn't really even understand that you could get a graduate degree in music. It never occurred to me to get a degree in music. And I stumbled into this. I started college as an elementary education major and was taking piano lessons on the side. And eventually they were like, you know, you're pretty good. If you majored in music, we would pay your tuition. So I switched and changed my major, and I just looked at the world that was around me. I was at Eastern Illinois University, a small school in Charleston, Illinois, and I loved seeing the piano professors who spent their day playing the piano, teaching the piano, and I noted that they all were able to continue performing. And I loved playing and I loved performing, and I thought I would love to have a job like this where you're immersed in an environment with artists and you're always having that opportunity to continue making music. And that was really what motivated me to pursue this career.
Krista?
Yeah, I think I had a similar experience. It was a non-linear path for me. I auditioned for and won a position performing full time and did that for a while. And ultimately just kind of looked around at the people who were some of the most important mentors in my life, and those were my professors. And I noted, as Dean Petrella did, that they were performing at this really high level, as well as being tremendous mentors, and they were showcasing their talents all over the world. And I thought, wow, that would be an amazing job if I could get it.
You got it.
You got it.
That's awesome.
So a quick question before a quick kind of give us a little bit of where we're at in our careers before I ask this next question. And sorry, but you gotta share. Chuck, how many years? Academia?
I sort of stopped counting, but it's just beyond 30 at UMKC.
Diane?
Well, it's 14 at UMKC. So I think it's about 19, almost 20 years. Gosh, I feel old now.
There's a method to my madness at this moment. Krista?
This is my 10th year full time.
Okay, so we're all at, various stages. So I'm going to ask Diane, since you're sitting on, that you've applied, now you're a dean, what are some considerations that people need to think about when they're applying for a job in higher education? And I know all of you will have something, so that'll be great. But from your perspective, you've seen it through the whole cycle.
Yeah, I've seen it through the cycle, and I would say that even as a student, I feel like if you wait to think about it until you're ready to apply for the job, you're probably too late. Right? And I really worked a lot throughout my higher education path to create a resume that made me a strong candidate for the job that I wanted. And I see a lot of students who go through and they focus a lot on playing their instrument, which is very important, but not rounding out their experiences with applicable work that would make them a strong candidate. And so when I was pursuing my degrees in higher education, I selected the schools that gave me teaching assistantships instead of the ones that gave me collaborative piano ones, because I wanted the teaching experience. And I deliberately sought opportunities to round out my resume so that I would be a strong candidate for that first job. And I think that's the first thing that you should consider when you're trying to apply is, have you spent the last 8 to 10 years of your career in higher education getting your degrees, also getting the experiences that will make you a strong candidate when you go forward to apply.
That's good advice. Now, Krista, from your perspective, you're teaching flute at a university. You've been playing flute your entire life, and now 10 years in that position. For you, were there some things that you're like, these are really important things for me to consider as I apply? And I'm going to preface this with, and the reason I'm leaving Chuck last, Chuck teaches a class in college teaching that I believe maybe you took at one point. So I'm going to ask you to share, Krista, and then Chuck, if you would kind of maybe give us your summary as well.
Yeah, so in addition, I will add that you need to make sure you meet the minimum requirements for the job posting. And I say minimum, if the other things that are there aren't quite what you do, you can get around that. But if you meet the minimum requirements, apply. Do apply. Check the cost of living in the area. Make sure that if there are published salaries, you investigate those. A lot of times they're public record. Make sure that the potential offer is going to be something that's going to work financially for you and your family. There's nothing wrong in that. And I would also say, just realistically speaking, give yourself a deadline that works for you. A number of years that you're going to continue this considerable investment in the application process, and then you're going to start focusing a bit more on your plan B and your plan C.
That's great advice. Thank you. And now, Chuck, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you've probably taught this class now for 18, 20 years. Yeah. So any kind of nuggets of wisdom that you provide your students as they take these classes?
I don't know. I was good until you said the nuggets of wisdom thing. But I think I'll approach my answer with a slightly different way. I'll zoom out from it a little bit. And what I would say is develop an understanding of what in the world it means to be a college professor, because there's no way that a person can know, if just living one's life, you would have been a student in a studio, your lesson is done, you have a recital, you have that student perspective. Maybe you've done a little teaching on the side and you've done this, that, and the other thing, but it's very hard to know. College teaching is such a distinctive and very different way of life as an artist and an academician than any other thing anywhere. And so spend some time finding out more about it. Sometimes you can read about it, but basically I think that means paying attention and talking to lots and lots of mentors and getting a broad perspective, which takes me all the way back to Dean Petrello's suggestion, which I totally agree with, and that's just broaden your portfolio, right? So that's what I would say.
Great.
Yeah, and can I just chime in one more time that I think that I see that the most when I'm talking to students who want these jobs or when they're thinking about applying for them, is that you have to really understand everything that's involved, right? When you're looking at teaching, research, and service. And I would also say that a lot of students don't understand the difference between qualifications for a job and a job description. And as they're applying for these jobs and they're considering which ones they should go for, I think what Krista said about making sure that you have the qualifications and that you tweak things to meet the job description requirements, those kinds of things. But you have to understand all of those things, right? What the job entails and the difference between the qualifications and the description.
I'm not going to offer a lot in this session, but I'm going to offer this one thing. I think if students look at me, they're going to see me conducting, they're going to see me teach a couple, they won't see me teach lessons. I teach them all the time, but they're going to see a few public aspects of my life. They're not going to see the 10 committee meetings that I'm in every week. They're not going to see the countless letters of recommendations that I'm always writing. They're not going to see the phone calls that I'm in. They're not going to see the cataclysmic things that are always looming that we're trying to navigate in the best way for our students. And I think a really important, I wish I knew, I know it now because I've been doing it for 20 years. But the one aspect I think would have helped prepare me better is just, this is going to sound so silly, but just ask a mentor or someone if you can follow their entire life for a week and see what the whole life looks like, or can I see your calendar, or can I there's so much more to it than me just working with the students in Wind Symphony. I mean, it is, and I see this, I'll piggyback and then I'm done, but I see principal chair players from an orchestra that come join our faculty that have been doing that for 20 years. And then all of a sudden they're like, whoa,
well,
way more than I thought it was. I thought I just had to come in here and teach the kids.
Exactly.
Holy cow, it's not.
Yeah, you're so right. I literally had a colleague I've known for 15 years say to me yesterday, I had no idea you did all this research. None. And he goes, and the question was, do you use that to influence your teaching? And I went, yeah. They had no idea. I just thought you just, knew that. I'm like, no, this is part of who I am.
And we'll go to the next question. We can rattle off a couple things quick. I don't think we need to spend a long time on this one. But where are some places students can be looking for the postings of these jobs? Krista, you want to start just so you
Sure.
know that they exist?
Yes, exactly. So if it's a research job that you're looking for, you can look on the Chronicle of Higher Education. You can look on higheredjobs.com. Those are going to be really fast ways for you to do a keyword search for what you're looking for and see a list of what's available. Also, you want to think about the timing of when you look for these. The hiring happens in waves. There's a first wave that's going to happen early in fall semester. In fact, it's already underway for some of the searches. And those offers are going to happen, usually interview process is somewhere early spring semester, and then offers happen also early spring semester. After that wave, a second wave happens to fill vacancies from the first wave. For teaching positions, they will advertise in the same places, but you can also send well-timed emails with your information to chairs of all the higher ed music departments or whatever applies to you, any place that's even remotely commutable from where you live. You never know when a well-timed email is going to reach someone right before they need a warm body to put in front of their intro level class or their methods class, or even to teach a few lessons. And that's a great way to get your foot in the door.
That's how I got a job. They just needed a warm body. I'm doing all right. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Diane?
Yeah, I mean, great advice. I would say also the music vacancy list from the College Music Society is a great place to see the music jobs. In addition, those are there all the time. And to echo what Christo said about, just writing letters to local departments, that's really important. I think you should be doing that as a doctoral student and getting that experience while you're there. I also find it really helpful to connect with teachers and mentors and let them know that you are looking for opportunities. Even where you are, like if you're working on your doctorate, just telling the head of the keyboard department that, I'd love to get some adjunct teaching while I'm here. Because I can tell you get calls all the time from a community college or another local college that's looking for somebody to fill in. And if I have your name sitting there on the tip of my tongue, then I'm more likely to put you forward.
Chuck?
I'll just briefly expand on that last point, which I think is great. And it's just an extension of another key thing that everybody should be doing, and that's just constantly connecting with other professionals at every level. And I would include your doctoral student friends, your undergraduate friends who know somebody who knows somebody. It's not sleazy or anything. It's just relationship building so that you're just hearing what's going on in the world and they're thinking about you. And I also would echo what Dean Petrella said about connecting with your mentors, those potential references, to just say, hey, I'm just letting you know I'm about to wrap up things. I'm going to be in the job hunt if you hear about anything. So it's actually both formal, I completely agree with Krista's points, and then the informal, just communication.
I want to add on this because no one's mentioned it, and I got off social media about 8 years ago because I didn't like the arguing and fussing, but that's just me. But on those social media platforms, there are specific pages for instruments. There's a wind conducting page, there's kazoo pages, there's electric guitar pages, that a lot of these things are posted in your exact specific area of interest. So just whatever that's worth as well. I didn't hear anyone mention that, so I think that's...
Yeah, there's also wiki lists that are, which are great, and I love following those to see what the perception of our searches is.
I just asked real quick that we don't have 120 emails going to the 3 local other universities here in Kansas City. Can we time that out a little bit? I don't want all these other schools to be, what the heck happened to UMKC? All right.
Oh, man. When Steve gave the advice of, both between what everybody said, I think follow a mentor, see what their life is like. I knew that service was part of this profession, but I didn't realize that 20%, and I'm winking and nodding, and is not maybe 20%, but it's an important aspect of how we solidify our philosophy of an institution and who we want to be and who we want to work with. So when, and this one to you, Chuck, when you've been on so many search committees, what characteristics are you looking for in an applicant? And maybe the steps to that point.
Well, so that this could be broad and hopefully memorable, I'll just give you 2 categories, and then I can briefly expand. But I'm looking for somebody who's competent in their subject matter, whatever the job is that we need, and I'm looking for somebody who's nice. I'm looking for a competent person professionally and a good human being. For me, I put those on a sort of a sliding scale, and some people are brilliantly competent but really a jerk as a human. Me, that's a deal breaker. It's like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm just not going to do it. I've also encountered some really sweet, wonderful humans who just weren't quite up to the task on the subject matter side, and I said, sorry, I'm not going to do that either. So for me, that's really what I'm looking for. And then briefly, I would just add, I'm looking for a person who really genuinely loves to work together with other people and dream and scheme and do stuff like, I'll take this end of the risers and you get the other end and let's go do this. My dad has a barn, let's put on a show. I want that level of energy in the person. So that's what I'm looking for.
Diane?
Yeah, I mean, I've been on a lot of search committees too, and then sitting in the dean's office, I kind of see how they all go by. And we've run, I think, 25 in the last 4 years. It's been pretty crazy here. I would break it down into two categories too, but I would say you have to know what people are looking for on paper, and then you have to know what they're looking for if you get the opportunity to speak in person, right? And if you don't present yourself well on paper, you're never going to get to speak to anybody in person, right? And on paper, bottom line, I need to see that you have read that job description and that you've looked at the qualifications and that you meet those. And I can go through 150 resumes and cover letters for a job and narrow it down pretty quickly, because pretty commonly there's only 10 to 15 who actually have addressed the qualifications for the job and then written the letter and organized their information in a way that makes it very clear that they are prepared to deliver what's in the job description, right? And so I can always tell somebody who has just written one letter and prepared one resume and sent it out to 15 jobs, and somebody who's actually read your description and catered their materials to your job. And so that's what I'm looking for on paper is, are they meeting the qualifications, and do they see the job description, and are they telling me how they are qualified to do this job and how they are prepared to move our program forward. In person, it's the same thing, right? You can engage with somebody who has their own agenda or is not really in touch with your institution, your programs, and know what you are looking for. And will listen and ask questions that are insightful to this unique situation. And I think those are both really important things to consider.
Dean Petrell kind of segued into number 5, and that's awesome. We'll just make the transition into that. And Krista and Chuck, you all can piggyback on that. And the question that we have is really, in a nutshell, what makes a certain person pop?
Sure. So some of it kind of reiterates some points that have already been made. You need to make sure that you bring all of your research interests to fruition in a way that a committee member could see what you are doing as part of the whole of what they're looking for, and what you're doing, relating it to materials that are going to expand the reputation of the institution. You have to make sure everything is formatted well. It probably seems so obvious, but don't try to game the system by using really small fonts or small margins. You know, make sure that it looks neat and it's presented well and your cover letter is on letterhead. Don't use a lot of emotional language. Use evidence. Include your evidence, exclude emotional language. You don't need to talk about how profound your work is or how important it is or how passionate you are. Provide the evidence for all of those things. So as was mentioned earlier, make sure you've gotten outside of the institution. Put your best foot forward when you're in school. Take every semester to play in all the ensembles that will have you. You will never get the chance again to be in an ensemble where everybody is on their game like they are when you're in school. Play in the brass band, play in the wind symphony, play in the orchestra, play in every chamber music group that you can, and take all the lessons. I wish I could take lessons now. I miss that so much. But think about building that CV with experiences that are outside of your degree granting institution.
Chuck.
Yeah, I would echo a couple of things, and I would come back to the idea of making sure you match what the institution says the institution wants. That is so on point. And so your CV and your cover letter are just kind of get you a ticket to the midway, get you into the theater, to the lobby, right? and then you've got to do a lot more after that. But you want to make sure that you present yourself in such a way that you clearly fit what they said they were looking for. And that then goes back to, on the cover letter, I so agree with not saying, by the way, I'm outstanding, right, as anyone can plainly see. So just instead say, I was excited to read that you're looking for someone who yada, yada, yada. I have been fortunate to have the opportunity to do yada, yada, yada for a lot of times, and I've been recognized for my work and so on. So make sure what you're talking about is matching up what you have done and what you can do. The other thing, though, going back to the search committee question, I'm looking for I'm a little different maybe than some others. I really have a preference personally for possibility over track record. Okay, so there's got to be a balance, clearly, but I love possibility, and I'd rather see somebody who I just see like in 10 years they're just going to have this place zooming. It's going to be so amazing, and so demonstrate not only what you have done, but what you're dreaming and what you could do given the opportunity. And then finally, I would say I've always impressed when somebody comes in with a fairly specific linear list of the first thing I would do and the second thing I would do. And then finally, I love a person who's curious and who's done the homework about our school and says, I see that you have a program and so, do you think we could expand that? So all of those things come back to you presenting yourself as a person who's going to be a beautiful fit for this community.
Most of the discourse we've done so far is prior to invitation to campus. Now you have a great day when you receive an email that says you've made it into the final 3 and we want to bring you to campus. And Joe, start us towards this. What happens?
Well, okay, so Chuck's point led us right there. I have been on a committee where people have come to interview and they have done no research about the institution, like none. And I'm thinking, well, you came here and you don't even know anything. Oh, you're a conservatory? It's in the name. I actually had that once. So, and I went, yeah. So I'm going to flip. Maybe I can flip this so that our students can think about this. So I'll tell you what I'm flipping.
I'm going to forget this if I don't mention this.
Sure.
Make sure your pre-materials that you submit are honest. I was on a committee, I'm not talking about lack of like you're lying, but these are subconscious lies. So I was at the University of Michigan at a time. We had a search person for X instrument. I won't say what it was. And they came and they auditioned, and this was not the same person that we heard on the tapes. And it was the same person pushing the buttons down, but it was clearly 4,556 edits. And because it wasn't anything close to what we were experiencing real time. And it was bothersome. So great, it got an invitation, but it actually ended up serving the intention function aspect of that ended up being profoundly negative. So
I still got the job. Sorry. Oh, I haven't. Sorry. That everything you're all saying, I'm like, how did I get this job? So it's true though. So many people are not honest on paper and try to make more of and it's what you all said. So now they're here, and this is where I was flipping the next question a bit. What is a question you like to ask people when they are here, finally on campus, that you just want to know what they believe? I mean, obviously, if they're for a specific job, we all ask, how will you bring this program there? But I mean, is that it? Or if you had one question, maybe you could share with our students, or two, what you think. What are some of the questions that you like to ask? And I'll start with Krista.
Sure. I love to ask what their continued plans are for performances and collaborations, and that's partially selfish. One thing that I love about my job is that I get to work with these wonderfully creative people, and I get to create cross-disciplinary projects, as well as, you know, chamber music and all of these things that I've loved for a long time. So I love to hear what they're thinking about what, you know, they maybe could put together with some other people. And I also love to ask them what their questions are for us. That tells me a lot about sort of where they're coming from.
Yeah, and again, that's when I know if they've done any homework. Yeah, good point. Chuck?
I actually, again, tend to favor sort of big, broad questions that have to do with the person self-assessing, letting me know who they really are, what they love, what they're passionate about. So I'll give you two questions. One of these, Professor Davis and I used recently in a search where I said, or we said, when we presented this to the person, imagine your own skill set and what you're really honestly very good at. And imagine also what you're really, really passionate about. Think about those for a moment. And based on those, tell us what is your best job description. In other words, write your own job description based on your passion and your skill set. To me, that's something everybody could do anyway, but it lets me know whether the person has thought in those terms and then can say, therefore, I think your job is really an excellent fit for me. And then another that I'll share that I really like is really broad. I say, you know, everybody's really busy and you just had a busy, really tough week. And you're just so glad to be driving home on Friday afternoon. But you're going home with this big grin on your face and you're going, wow, this was a great day. So tell me what happened on that day that caused you to have that moment. And I've had some really interesting responses to that. Everything from this student came in and told me that finally they got this thing that they've been struggling with for what, or it was a moment in a rehearsal or whatever they say, but it lets me see inside to who the person is and what they value.
That's great. Thank you.
I ask almost every person I interview with, first, I just ask, why UMKC? Why the conservatory? And that's just an open-ended way to see if they've done any research, as Joe was saying. And a good response will always be citing really unique aspects of our program, right? That excited them or made them interested, or something they had seen. They may say that they saw a faculty perform at a conference and it really grabbed their attention. I also ask them what unique opportunities are in their field that are aligned with the mission of this institution, right? What is unique about this place that could help you move forward in your career, and how are we in sync? And then I also always ask some sort of experiential question, usually designed around conflict. I mean, I'll ask them, can you just describe a situation where you had a conflicting situation with maybe a student or a colleague? Describe the situation and how you resolved it. And that's just me just trying to see if they'll be honest and how they would address challenges. It goes back to Chuck's response that I want a nice person, but I also want somebody that I know we all are going to engage in conflict at some point in time, right? And how do we resolve it and how do we discuss it can be really telling into how somebody's communication skills are.
I think that's an extremely valid point, because a lot of times, you know, a good teacher, I mean, if you take even a public school model, a principal has never seen a discipline problem from that teacher because they take care of their house. And
yes.
I think as a dean, I can imagine you're like, if I got someone that I know is going to take care of business, my life is a little easier.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I ask the same two questions every search. I'm probably, if you're applying to UMKC, you're going to get asked these questions if I'm on the search committee. So here we go. If you're an instrument player, I always ask this question. Who are your musical heroes and why? Mm-hmm. They cannot play your instrument. And then, like, that is, I've asked that question to many people on a specific something, and it throws, I'm not doing it to throw a curveball at them. Mm-hmm. I'm doing it to see how their brain works. Do they believe that life is like supremely narrow, like it's flute, 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 flute? That's boring to me, honestly. Like I love the flute, I love the trumpet, I love the oboe, I love it all. But if it's only that, my life is going to be really boring, at least to me. So I like to see a cosmopolitan viewpoint of the music world, the arts world, the things that motivate us. I think that's important, and it also tells me what kind of musical aptitude or musical comparisons they're viewing themselves against, and what they view the ceiling is. And that we're all about ceilings here, and we're wanting to like really be profound examples. Okay, that's the first question. The second question is unlimited budget. You've been given all the money in the world. And then I name the 5 most prevalent choral composers and say you can't ask any of them to write a piece for your choir and something that you want to do in a collaborative ideal. Are there any unexpected questions that come up in interviews, or things that catch you sideways, or what would that be? What are some things there?
Yes. there's always going to be unexpected scenarios or questions, and sometimes your campus interview could be 48 hours that you're spending in that place, and so you're going to be spending a great portion of your day with people that you're meeting for the first time, and you're definitely going to want to think about taking care of yourself with sleep and water and good food, and so that you're mentally ready to gracefully handle those situations that come your way. There's definitely always the option of doing a whole bunch of mock interviews and do them with as many people as you can, and you'll find that the questions that are most frequently asked kind of fit categories that you can prepare for, but they're always going to be framed differently. So prepare yourself to the best of your ability to be able to think on your feet, do the yes and mentality where you acknowledge what's being said and then you bring it back to your strengths.
Chuck?
Yeah, I agree with those points, every one of them, including it helps to practice because most of us don't interview all the time. But I'll get on the other side of that and say all of us interview all the time, which is to say that if you think of the interview process like a focused conversation that goes on and on and on with a series of little moments and big moments and all of that. So it's a series of little interactions. And I will also say, going to Krista's really good point, that from the moment you get on the plane or get in the car, the interview has begun. I even say, if you're flying from Pittsburgh to here, when you get in the queue to get on the plane, the interview has begun. You need to have your head there and be thinking about it. And then every interaction with the meals and the drive from here to there, walking across campus. But it doesn't have to be scary. It just means you have to be focused and on task, that you're just talking with people. And the other thing I would add is, going back to an earlier comment, be curious and be thinking about what do you wonder about. And so you say to Professor Davis, so can you tell me more about how you built this incredible wind symphony? Because I know when you came here, tell me a little bit about that, right? What did it take? Well, that's absolutely appropriate, and it's not because you're trying to win his favor. It's because you're showing that you want to learn from him in that conversation. So that's just one example. And then I would add one more thing. If there's an undergraduate driving you across campus for XYZ, it's part of the interview. Thing you can do is talk to that person and say, tell me about your experience. Where are you from? Chillicothe. I don't think I know Chillicothe. And then people begin to talk. I go back to one other really key point. Maybe my summary comment would be just always be thinking about relationships. And every moment matters, and the quality of that moment. And it's usually better when we're listening instead of when we're speaking. So
I'm gonna let Diane jump in, but Chuck, you hit a nail on the head about the car ride. Just so our students know, we all know each other in the profession, okay? And one of our esteemed students at the conservatory was a finalist years ago for a job. And I had a friend of mine say, they were doing great. Then we got in the car together, and as soon as we got into the car, I was on task to my only time with this person, and they were texting several people and not really paying attention to the conversation. I went, oh gosh. So I had to have that difficult conversation with the student saying, you know, I think you had the job, but you may have lost it in that car ride because that was the so-and-so chair of the, and I don't think it fared well. Were you texting? Yes. Oh, okay.
Well, I want to piggyback on Chuck's thing. The real life about the meeting with the students and showing a different side of your personality. We had some people that have gone in there and dropped some F-bombs and said some things that were like, whoa. And that's immediately reported back to us. And we're like, no, not even no, but absolutely not. So you're always being watched. And we're talking about when you're at the host stand at a restaurant, you're talking to a waiter, you're talking to someone that's in front of you that you're in a hurry for. We're watching all of that. There is great evaluation happening. And you also need to know this. It is our job as a community for you to feel like you're going to win this job when you leave here. You're going to leave here and you're going to talk about what your experiences were here. And we want it to be a beautiful endeavor. So we've had some people that haven't been awarded jobs that when they got in cars to go back home, I've heard this later, that they're like, I knew I was getting that job. And of course they didn't get the offer, and they were shocked that they didn't get the offer. And it was, they weren't picking up on all the innuendos that we were picking up on. So you have to, and we weren't reacting to them because we're just being kind people, but we're taking data constantly. So just be aware of that. And then also the other thing that jams some people up, soloist players. When you come to a place and you do a recital, you're working with a collaborative pianist, and many have long conversations with those people. How did you feel that interaction was? How did they handle stress? How did they respond to you? Were they curt? Were they polite? Were they creative? That's important. That's music making in real life. Sorry, done. Yep. Okay, sorry, Diane.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I would just, I mean, you've all covered so much. I would just chime in that it's the social aspect that trips a lot of people up. And just being able to socialize, to make small talk that's appropriate, to find levity in situations. And we're watching how you react to everything. My favorite story, and I'll just throw this out there, is what a story a friend of mine told about an interview where they had this candidate in, played beautifully, taught beautifully, everything was great. They all went out for lunch. The candidate went to put ketchup on their burger, and the top came off the ketchup bottle and went all over their clothes. And the candidate did not handle this well. And that really was one of the reasons they didn't get the job, was because they just couldn't adjust and respond with some levity to a bad situation that would have shaken up a lot of people, of course. But from there on out, it was called the ketchup test at that institute. But I see that a lot. It's your catch-up test. You know, what happens when you spilled the coffee on the table when you were interviewing with the dean? Did you laugh? Did you brush it off? Did you help clean it up? Whatever happened, it's those little engagements that are often the window into somebody's non-interview persona, which we have to be aware of to see how they're going to fit into our community.
You know, and I think that applies for interviewing for anything, right?
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. I also took a flight once that got delayed for hours and hours and hours, went back and forth between two cities. People were flipping out the whole time. I landed 5 hours late, landed at my hotel at 3 o'clock in the morning for an interview that started at 7, and found out the next day when I walked in for the dean portion of the interview that the dean was on that flight, right, with me at the same time. And so you just never know.
I don't remember who told me this piece of advice, but it was so true. If you remember what you were eating at the meals, you weren't on task to the interview process. So I lost a good bit of weight on the 2.5 days. UMKC.
So true.
None of my food was gone. I was just sitting there paying attention to everybody because they're asking you questions over meals nonstop.
Yeah.
Anyway, Diane, how do you tell someone this is a good fit for you? Like this institution is a good fit.
Yeah, to me, it's a lot about how their goals and their skills align with our institution and our mission, right? And it's not always just that they're a great player and a great teacher. If their goals aren't aligned with our institutional mission, it's not a good fit, right? Or if their method of engaging with students or colleagues is not in line with the culture and the way we like to engage, it's not a good fit. Right, so you have to ask a lot of questions to make sure that you're both on the same page. It does not do us as an institution any good to hire somebody who's not a good fit, right? Because searches are time consuming. They take a lot of resources. We want to be invested in faculty. We want them to succeed. So finding somebody whose goals and mission and everything is aligned with where we're going, and I know that we as an institution can support them and that it's going to be a mutually beneficial relationship, that is always what we want, right? It's not somebody who thinks they're doing us a favor by dropping in and teaching our students, right? It's somebody who really is excited about the unique opportunities with our institution and our community and is thinking that this is going to be a mutually beneficial relationship.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Chuck or Krista, you want to offer anything on that one? Or
So another thing that I know I wasn't aware of when I was in graduate school is the Carnegie classification system for higher ed institutions. This might be worth checking out if it's something you haven't heard of before. This is basically a way to look and see on a very broad strokes kind of level, what is that institution all about and what would my responsibilities probably look like? So at the first level, that you have Research 1 institutions, and that's where you're going to have a lot of doctoral students, a lot of expectations for research and creative activity, and then Research 2, and it kind of goes from there. So you can get an idea if that would be a great fit for you that way. I would echo everything that's been said already. I would also say that if you're fortunate enough to have an offer, make sure that you ask for everything you need right at the beginning. A lot of the listening, the paying attention to body language, the way professors speak to each other, the way the students' body language look when they walk down the hallway, a lot of that can happen at the campus visit. I think you'll get a lot of information there, but you can do a lot of your investigative work, of course, in advance of the campus visit. Once you have that offer in hand, make sure that you are going to make a livable wage, that you have, again, everything you need for yourself and for your family.
Can I jump in here real quick about negotiating? Do not negotiate until you've won the job.
Excellent advice.
People lose jobs in negotiating before they've won the job. 2, negotiate your salary last. Negotiate all student-centered needs for excellence first. It is the right way. It is centering us in the modality that we are giving our lives to, which is to serve the students. And they kept wanting to talk to me about salary in my first hire here, and I was like, I'm not ready to talk salary. I'm ready to talk what you want for this wind symphony and band and wind ensemble, the program in general, and I need you to be willing to support it, and these are the ways we have to have that support if you want a top-tier program that everyone looks to as a model of excellence, and that it's going to cost money. So we have to go through, and some won't, but some will cost money, and these are some tangible things, and then come to yourself last. I think that's good advice. What do I mean by not negotiating? When you're there, I lost a job early in my career because when I was talking to the dean of the school, I was like, how much money goes to the band program? How much this? How much that? Blah, blah, blah. And they gave like peanuts compared to what I thought was necessary. And it scared them. And they were, no, we can't, it's not going to, back to the fit question, it's not going to work. So I think I screwed up. And I went home and I learned and I talked and I grew, and I would never, ever do that now. All right, anyway, let's go. But I just want to talk towards the dean's points there.
Chuck, do you have something to offer on that subject as far as a good fit?
I don't mean to be silly, but is the question still, are we deciding whether the candidate is a good fit?
Yeah, well, you know, you've mentored many students. And so when you're mentoring them and maybe they come back and they're talking to you, what should they have thought about? I mean, I'm thinking about our students watching this. How do they know a place is a good fit? Maybe even after they went, or while they're there, or, you know.
Yeah, I would love to address that. Like some of you, I had the benefit of some remarkable mentors, actually many of them, but especially as I was completing my doctoral study, and my doctoral mentor taught me this concept, which has been really important for me. And number one, the most important thing, and if you think, well, let me digress briefly, and that is, you know, a lot of folks will say for your first teaching job, if it's a job with a salary and you can buy groceries, take it. I really don't. I don't agree with that. And the reason I don't is there's a point. Krista made an excellent point. There has to meet some threshold of acceptability and goodness of fit, or it's a mistake, because even if you can buy groceries, it's not going to go to a good place. It's not going to last, and it could be just a really big problem. So what I would say is the most important thing is, what do you get to do every day when you get up and you drive over there and you do that stuff at the school? Is it something you love, and is it something you're really good at? If it is, you have half a chance to make the rest of the stuff work. So what you get to do every day, and it doesn't mean that you don't need to do or have to do some things that you're not really that in love with, but the key thing that you get to do needs to be something that's deep in your soul, rewarding to you. It's going to pay you back on the hard days. The next thing is really important, and we've alluded to it here as well. It needs to feel right that you're moving into a community of artists and scholars where you're going to have a good life. Mm-hmm. Now, that takes on many forms. Number one, at the human level, you just know that when you hear or watch somebody work, that they inspire you, that they thrill you, that you cannot believe that you get to be in the same place with them. Whatever it is, and it could be a performing musician, it could be a scholar. I'll name a name. Bill Everett. Every time I watch or read something he's done, it takes my breath away, and I think, how do you do that? Composers like Chen Yi, I could go on and on. So that's very important. But there's one other thing, and it goes to Krista's point about salary, or we've talked about resources in an institution or in a community. What is there that's going to support your work to let you, going back to what I said earlier, let you grow and become and do amazing things? And if it's really tamped down, like there are no resources, you're discouraged from doing that, just be quiet, teach these 8 classes, and that's all we want, it's going to eat your soul up. Don't do that, okay? Don't do it. Or if you have to do it for a year and immediately be, looking elsewhere. And then one more aspect to this about community. Where we live culturally is really important for ourselves and our people in our lives that we love. So I love Kansas City. I love living there and being part of this community. Not everyone would. I don't think I would enjoy living in a large northeastern city. So I probably would not want to live and work in that setting, but others would be thrilled to be there. So I'm almost done. Look carefully in the mirror and deep in your soul and know yourself and know what you want to do, what you want to be, the kind of life you want to lead, and then put yourself in that place to the best of your ability.
Wow, what great advice. Thank you, all of you.
The question is, it seems that winning and maintaining a job in higher education requires many hoops to jump through. And the answer is, it does. It's true. There's a million hoops that you have to accomplish. How do you maintain a sense of connection to the passion that brought you into the field? So that's part A of the question. And what is the most rewarding part of your job? And I'll start. I'll give mine real quick. We were talking about, those of you that don't know the academic life, it is a 40-40-20 in most places. And that 40-40-20 is research, teaching, and service. But I have never ever viewed it that way in my life, just to be honest with you. But that's how you're tangibly measured. But I have measured it. I have 100% service to do. And I have never said no. I almost said no to one committee, but the dean talked me into it. And I did it, but I have never said no to a committee invitation. I have never said, I'm not saying everybody has to do that, but I am here. I've given a very, very large percentage of my life to this school. And I want to see it better when I leave than when I got here. So that's serving and advancing and thinking about the kids and thinking about the composers and thinking about my colleagues and thinking about the mission and thinking about the direction are all profoundly joyful. So if you're doing it, can you imagine being in the community that I'm in right now with Joe and Krista and Diane and Charles? I'm in a community like this with 700 people. that are all brilliant and seeking and learning and growing. It's, how can there not be joy? My dean will tell you I'm not always joyful. There's a problem here and we got to go there, but I hope no one ever doubts that my want is just always the same: excellence for our kids. That's all it ever is. So that's
Professor Davis, we could tell it when you stepped on the podium during your interview.
okay.
Several of us wrote "hire this man" in huge letters across our papers. It's always been evident, Professor Davis.
Thank you. All right, who wants to go? Both aspects, joy and hoops. And
I'll jump in. You know, for me, especially going down the path of administration, how do you maintain your passion and your connection? You know, as a piano teacher, I found that was easy because I loved what I did. I loved making music. I loved having an impact on students' lives. Even I love teaching keyboard skills. I'm probably one of the few people in the world that love that because I loved having an impact on their musicianship and giving them confidence. As a piano pedagogy teacher, I love knowing that we were putting competent, strong teachers out there and perpetuating strength in a field that I'm really passionate about. And then when you get into administration, it's really, I think that's the biggest challenge, is are you losing track of that? And are you keeping in touch with that? And for me, the best way to keep that passion and that energy connected is by attending performances, by watching our students perform, by watching our faculty perform, by going to a concert, because then it's like, this is what it's all about. And this is why we're doing this, or seeing the impact our programs have on a program like Musical Bridges and seeing the impact on those kids. That's why we do what we do, and that makes me excited about coming to work every day. The most rewarding part about being where I am now, there's a lot of things that are not rewarding, especially in a time when you're going through the trials that we're all going through right now. You question a lot of things on a daily basis. But I would say that what I've always found rewarding about being in this role is knowing that I'm facilitating the work of great people, that I'm facilitating the education of students who have so much potential. And so I think if I have a gift, it is being able to translate the performing arts into meaningful academic experiences, and in being able to articulate to people who maybe are not artists how we do what we do in this setting, and being the advocate and the go-between for what is really needed for excellence in the performing arts, and helping people who don't do that at the higher level know what is needed for excellence so that we can be a great program. And I think there's few people who have that skill to translate it and to advocate and to take a faculty member who's maybe really frustrated because the university doesn't understand that the CD they just produced is not something that the university needs to own the rights to, right? And being able to articulate exactly that, well, you know, that CD performance is actually just how they're preserving the creative, unique interpretation that they have made of an original work. This isn't the purpose, it's more that this is how they're preserving it, and no, you have to not, this is the equation in another more academic field. Like, that's been really rewarding to me, is being able to be a strong advocate for the people who work in this unit. And knowing that you're helping so many people to succeed, because that's what keeps me going through all of the trials and tribulations of being a dean.
Chuck or Kristen?
Yeah, that resonates so much. I think if I could add one other thing, yes, there are a ton of things that you might find less than perfect when you enter any professional situation. But the great thing about jobs in academia is, as Dean Petrella and Professor Davis have mentioned, there's this idea of faculty governance. If there's something that you're not happy about, you have the ability to volunteer to help make things better, to be heard, and to help shape the trajectory of really your own career and your own department, which is really special. You do not get that in every professional situation. The teaching is always going to be great. The students are amazing, and you're going to celebrate their successes with them, your current and former students. I would say, for me, a big part of it is scheduling, because work-life balance is not something that necessarily comes naturally for me, and I think maybe for a lot of musicians. So personally, I always make sure I have projects on the horizon that I'm working toward, and I make sure to schedule lunch for myself, which I did not always do. I don't eat lunch in the same place where I teach, and I do not eat lunch alone if I can help it. And I make time for my practicing and my working out and the things that are important to me, my family. And nobody is going to tell you that serving on 10 committees might not be a good idea unless you have been assigned a really amazing faculty mentor. So you have to decide what the boundaries need to be for yourself so that every aspect of your life enriches the other.
Great advice.
Chuck?
Oh, I'm thinking about so many things. Krista, you just really hit on some really key points having to do with work-life balance and self-care. And I'm reminded that really all of us get to decide a lot of what we do or don't do. And that's one of the joys of this work that also makes higher education remarkably different. If you think about the amount of autonomy that any given professor has in terms of selecting subject matter, process, and outcomes, it's amazing compared to almost everybody else in the world. So in that regard, you have both a remarkable opportunity, which is thrilling, and a daunting responsibility to make good choices. A lot of this, again, I'm going to tell you about my mom, who taught second grade, and the best teacher I ever knew. And she taught me as a child, and then even as an adult, when she had to remind me to just pay attention to every moment. She said to me, Charles, wherever you are, be there. Be right there. And so what I would say is, wherever we are, we need to pay attention. If it's in a lesson, if it's in the library, if it's preparing a score, if it's whatever it is. But the other thing I would add to that is the less fun parts. One of my mentors also said to me, if you want to drive the car, you got to change the oil, okay? And that's not all, real fun as the top down with the radio going, but you got to change the oil. So I've long thought about that too. And I'm a believer, just like Professor Davis, in the service aspect of what we do. It's an opportunity to invest, as Krista said too, in our own community and make it a better place. And I also want to come back to something that Steve said, having to do with what I'm going to call the crossing of the lines. Instead of putting everything in an Excel column or something, this is your teaching, this is, to me, it really all just runs together as this remarkable way of life, and each thing informs the other and serves the other. So for me, if somebody says, so how do you not get burned out and lose the passion? Well, there are hard days and there are things that I don't enjoy, but when I stop and realize that they all serve each other and we're moving to a better place, then it's good. My last thing that has driven me from a personal standpoint always, and what thrills me the most and moves me the most, indeed, if I let myself be moved now, you would see the emotion. When I see a student move from here to there as a human being and as an artist, it thrills me. There's nothing more important to me than being part of that, okay? And so on any day when I'm a little bit kind of having a bad day, that's what saves me.
Mm-hmm.
This is you all. We're towards the end. We've got through the 10 questions and we're at about, 57 minutes or so. So we've reached a reasonable spot to bring this to conclusion. But I would love to offer you all a great opportunity to share anything that we might have forgotten. It doesn't have to be organic. It doesn't have to be, it can be something of substance that, oh shoot, maybe you don't want to have 3 drinks when you're at the dinner with somebody. Maybe, or whatever, or maybe you don't want to wear the most uncomfortable thing because you're going to be walking 5,000 steps that day, whatever, some simple things like that too. So I don't know. Krista, do you have any final words for us?
Sure. There are no mistakes, and authenticity speaks. Whatever your life experiences are, they're yours. They will serve to inform you. Allow everything that you experience to inform you, because, to paraphrase one of my most cherished mentors, life is one big lesson. And so just keep your eyes and ears wide open.
Thank you. Chuck?
First, thanks again for this opportunity. What a treat to just be part of this conversation. Relationships, right? And this is an extension of Krista's comment. Just pay attention and enjoy every relationship and learn from it. The other thing, going back to the whether or not to go into college teaching, the sort of the initial topic for today. I did want to say that I think in the title of the session it was something like winning a job at a college teaching position or whatever, but I would say that I think of it a little bit differently. I would name it finding a place to live, right? Finding a place to live that will thrill and inspire you and let you keep growing and making some sort of a difference. So that could be college teaching. And one other thing we didn't really talk about at length, but what's the difference between Johnson County Community College, where lives are changed and saved, right? And Avila and William Jewell and Michigan State and any number of other places. So it's find a place to live that's going to thrill you and let you grow and make a difference.
I think if I had like a closing thought, it's to build a network and to know that every single person who you engage with at any time, you have no idea when that person may be in a position to either help you or hurt you. And we can sit in classrooms with people and think of this as my competition, or we can sit in classrooms with people and think this is my network. And when we pull people up the ladder with us, they may skip 3 rungs and be there to pull us up later. And almost every job I have won in academia has been because of Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp.
Me too.
Where I started teaching. It's hilarious. I started teaching there when I was 22 years old and ended up chairing the piano program. I worked there for 10 years. And it was that network of people, and the kind of people who worked at Blue Lake were people who didn't care if they got dirty, who liked to have a good time, who weren't afraid to sing karaoke and go bowling. And play card games by the fire, but they also were really committed to teaching, and they love students, and they love to play, and they love to have a good time. And because I had those relationships, there were plenty of people across the country who knew that, yeah, sure, I could play the piano, I could teach the piano, but I also had a good sense of humor, and I was a real person who was there to help people and was going to be a good colleague and a good friend. And so if you're just sitting in a practice room or you're just sitting in a classroom, you can be the best pianist in the world. But if you don't have a network of people who are going to be there to help you climb that ladder, you're not going to go very far.
Thank you, Deepa.
Yeah.
Joe?
I am inspired, and I don't want to be long-winded, because I can state that you look at the screen and you look at people that were influential in my hiring, promotions, joy, helping me through valleys. I think the thing that I love most is the reciprocity of what I get to do in higher education. Even when the valleys are deep and could be like you can't see the light sometimes, the peaks are so worthy and joyful and life-changing. As Chuck said, where you see a student make progress, or where everybody said your service to a greater good bigger than you gives people light into the arts, into what we do each and every day. I mean, it's one of the best things I've ever done in my life. And, you know, I don't think this was the most linear path. I didn't know I wanted to do it, but I knew I wanted to teach, like Chuck said. And so just having that opportunity to do that as music, as my craft, wow. And to have colleagues like you, former students like you, leaders like you, and mentors, I mean, it's just ridiculously inspiring. So I have to thank you for a great session today. I hope our students realize what a bountiful discussion this was. Thank you.
No, thank you. This has been so much fun.
Invitation.
I'll say my last thing. I there's nothing left to say. I mean, I love everyone here. I needed this today. I've been struggling. 2 days ago, Joe was having a bad day, and I could sense it. And I kicked his foot, and I said, smile, we love you, or whatever. And I kicked it again. I said, smile. And I kicked it again. I said, smile. And I kicked it again. I said, smile. And I kept stepping. And And then yesterday I was having a bad day, and Chuck wrote me a beautiful email and or text actually, and said, and all he said was, "I love you, and you know that you're loved." And everyone is struggling right now. You're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very difficult time. Emotions are high. Cities are in great angst. We have all kinds of social things that are hitting us at one time, and it's difficult. A community, which is higher ed, can make profound, wonderful improvements to a society that is filled with ills. And I often said the only way that we can get through ills is through education. That's the way that we can leave the world a more beautiful place. If you've given your life to education, then know that you are making a difference. It is not going to be always easy. It's going to be heavy. You're going to get an email from a kid that will say something that will bother you. And you're going to get an email from a peer that will bother you. But you're also going to be able to unravel that and come out on the other side of that if it's handled in the right way, in a way that makes people more close and more beautiful and more connected. So we feel for you. We know that you're struggling. I'm struggling. I can't wait to get through this. I want 21 to happen faster than anything. I wish I could just take 2020 out of my life and set it aside. Although I'm trying to learn as much through this trauma as possible. That's all we can do, right? So let's all take a breath. Let's be careful to caring and loving towards each other. The frustrations are high. Calm. Let's breathe, and let's be more beautiful at the end of this. To our presenters here today, wow. Wow, capital W, capital O, capital W, 7 exclamation points. To Krista's point earlier, 72 font, underlined, italic. That's what today is. And this is our 5th one, I think, of these. And every single one of them, Joe and I have left in the middle of it, which is, what do they say about teaching? When you're in the middle of it, when you teach something, you learn the material better. When you're in something, it enhances you. That's happening to us all by doing this. Students, it's happening to you by observing it. Thank you for your input. Thank you for your dialogue. Thank you for your summaries. Thank you for your sincere dedication to this. If you're sharing this with us and you're abroad and you're overseas, and I had someone from Australia that says they're watching these things. And if you're in town, if you're in our community, there's no difference when you consider the love that we have for you. And we're thankful for all of you. And we wish you a best day or night or rest if you're going to sleep after watching this now. Krista, Diane, and Charles, and Joe, I love you all. And we are so indebted to your giving to us today. So thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.